The air over the Shinjuku ward grows unnaturally still. The familiar cacophony of Tokyo, the distant rumble of the Yamanote line, the chorus of a million conversations, the hum of city life itself, fades into an oppressive silence. What replaces it is a sound felt more than heard, a subsonic thrumming that vibrates through the concrete canyons, rattling glass in skyscrapers a kilometer away. It's the sound of a living nuclear furnace stoking its fires. At the epicenter of this strange quiet, the beast stands immense, a silhouette of primal dread against the bruised twilight sky. Its dorsal fins, jagged plates of biological myth, begin to pulse with an internal, ethereal blue light. The glow is cold, serene, and utterly terrifying. It is the color of deep ocean bioluminescence and Cherenkov radiation, a visual testament to physics being torn asunder. The light travels up the spine, a slow, deliberate fuse being lit, each plate igniting in sequence. The air itself begins to ionize around the creature's head, crackling with a faint violet corona. A low whine builds, the sound of unimaginable energies being focused and constrained by biological tissues that have no right to exist. For a heart-stopping second, a ring of distorted air, a gravitational lens in miniature, forms just before its maw. Then the sound ceases. All sound. Time seems to stretch and thin. With a snap that is not a noise but a rupture in reality, the beam erupts. It is not fire. It is not light. It is a solid, coherent spear of incandescent blue plasma, a controlled star beam unleashed. Where it strikes the base of the Tokyo Metropolitan Government Building, there is no explosion of debris. There is no thunderous impact. There is only instantaneous, silent deletion. A cylinder of steel, glass, and concrete, 243 meters tall and weighing over 600,000 tons, ceases to exist. It does not crumble or fall. It is transfigured into incandescent vapor and driven skyward as a superheated plume. The atomic breath is not a weapon of demolition. It is an instrument of erasure. To comprehend the sheer physical violence of Godzilla's atomic breath, one must first discard conventional analogies. This is not the incendiary spew of a mythological dragon, nor is it a simple flamethrower. It is a focused energy weapon of such impossible power that it stretches the boundaries of biology and enters the realm of high-energy physics. Observations across its many documented manifestations show a coherent, collimated beam, often blue or violet, that transfers tremendous thermal and kinetic energy to its target, resulting in effects ranging from explosive vaporization to a cutting-like penetration of armored targets. The quintessential blue glow that precedes and accompanies the blast is our first major clue. This is not the color of simple combustion. It is strongly suggestive of Cherenkov radiation, the eerie blue light produced when charged particles travel through a dielectric medium like air or water at a speed greater than the phase velocity of light in that same medium. This single visual cue tells us we are dealing with a phenomenon rooted in nuclear reactions, a particle accelerator made of flesh and bone. This leads to the foundational model of the creature itself. Godzilla is not merely an animal. He is a walking bionuclear reactor. His internal organs must function as a self-sustaining fission, or perhaps even a fusion power plant, capable of generating energy on a scale comparable to a nation's entire power grid. This internal reactor provides the raw power, but the breath weapon is the delivery system. The primary candidates for the beam's physical nature are a focused particle beam or a magnetically confined jet of plasma. A particle beam, composed of protons or heavy ions scavenged from the creature's environment and his own biological processes, would be accelerated to relativistic speeds within a specialized organ. A biological synchrotron, perhaps coiled along the esophagus and powered by unique bioelectrical organs, could achieve this. The dorsal fins, in this model, are not merely decorative. They are immense capacitor banks or heat sinks, glowing as they manage the titanic energies being drawn for the blast. When unleashed, this stream of particles would strike its target, transferring kinetic energy so violently that atomic bonds are ripped apart, vaporizing matter instantly. Alternatively, and perhaps more consistent with the visual of a fluid, sustained beam, the atomic breath could be a stream of plasma. Not just hot gas, but matter heated to millions of degrees Celsius hotter than the sun's surface, where electrons are stripped from their atomic nuclei. Godzilla's internal reactor would superheat a medium, perhaps an inert gas stored in specialized sacs or even ambient air, and then use phenomenally powerful magnetic fields generated by electrocytes of an unknown nature to contain and expel it through his mouth and throat, which would act as a magnetic nozzle. In this scenario, the destructive force is twofold. The immense thermal energy of the plasma melts and vaporizes any material it touches, while the kinetic force of the jet itself exerts a physical pressure measured in thousands of tons per square inch. Both hypotheses demand a biology so far beyond our own understanding it verges on the miraculous, yet they are both tethered to the fundamental laws of physics. They give us a framework to move beyond awe and into analysis, to begin calculating the true, terrifying cost of this power. To quantify the destructive potential of Godzilla's atomic breath on a city like Tokyo, we must select a target and calculate the energy required not merely to destroy it, but to vaporize it, as witnessed. Let us consider the Shinjuku Park Tower, a 235-meter, 52-story building. Its structure is primarily steel and concrete, with an estimated total mass of around 500,000 metric tons. Vaporizing this mass requires surmounting two immense thermodynamic hurdles. First, heating the material to its vaporization point, and second, supplying the additional energy, the latent heat of vaporization to force the phase transition from liquid to gas. Let's begin with the steel frame. Steel has a specific heat capacity of roughly 490 joules per kilogram per Kelvin. To raise its temperature from a baseline of 20 degrees Celsius to its boiling point of approximately 2862 degrees Celsius requires a change of 2842 Kelvin. For a conservative estimate of 100,000 tons of steel, 10 circumflex 8 kilogram, the energy required just to heat it to the boiling point is staggering. The calculation is 10 circumflex 8 kilogram x 490 J/kilogram x 2842 K, which yields approximately 1.39 x 10 circumflex 14 joules. Then we must supply the latent heat of vaporization for steel, which is about 6.09 million joules per kilogram. For 100,000 tons, this adds another 10 circumflex 8 kilogram x 6.09 x 10 circumflex 6 J/kilogram, or 6.09 x 10 circumflex 14 joules. The total energy to vaporize the steel alone is thus roughly 7.48 x 10 circumflex 14 joules. Now we turn to the 400,000 tons of concrete. Concrete doesn't have a simple boiling point. It decomposes and sublimates under extreme heat. But for a conservative energy calculation, we can treat it similarly, with a specific heat of about 880 G/kilogamic and an effective vaporization temperature around 2,500 degrees Celsius. A similar calculation for 400,000 tons 4x10 circumflex 8 kg yields a requirement in the realm of 1.5x10 circumflex 15 joules. In total, to vaporize a single large skyscraper, we're looking at a required energy input of well over 2.25 x 10 circumflex 15 joules, or 2.25 petajoules. To put that number into perspective, it is the equivalent of exploding approximately 538 kilotons of TNT. The atomic bomb dropped on Hiroshima had a yield of roughly 15 kilotons. Godzilla's breath, when directed at a single building for a few seconds, therefore releases the energy of more than 35 Hiroshima bombs. And this is a focused blast. This energy is not radiating spherically like a bomb. It is delivered in a collimated beam perhaps 10 to 20 meters in diameter. The energy density, the energy per unit area, is astronomical. It exceeds anything we can produce on Earth, including the thrust of our most powerful rocket engines or the impact of specialized bunker-busting munitions, by many orders of magnitude. A single sustained blast lasting 10 seconds could carry the energy equivalent of a multi-megaton thermonuclear weapon, focused into a fine point. Let's examine the plasma beam hypothesis more closely. To carry this much energy, the plasma would need to be both incredibly dense and impossibly hot. If we assume the plasma is composed of ionized hydrogen, reaching temperatures of 5 million Kelvin is not unreasonable for a biological fusion reactor. The true challenge is confinement. Unconfined, this plasma would expand explosively. Godzilla's anatomy must therefore be capable of generating a toroidal magnetic field of immense strength, a biological tokamak. His mouth, jaw, and throat would be lined with organs that function as biological superconductors, generating a magnetic nozzle that constricts and accelerates the plasma to a significant fraction of the speed of light. The recoil from such a blast would be extraordinary. By Newton's third law, the force pushing back on Godzilla would be equal to the force exerted by the beam. To avoid being thrown backwards across the city, his mass, estimated to be around 164,000 tons for some larger modern incarnations, combined with an anchoring, root-like musculature in his legs and tail, would be essential for stabilization. The ground beneath his feet would fracture and melt from the sheer pressure. The alternative, the particle beam, presents its own set of formidable challenges. A beam of protons accelerated to 99.9% the speed of light would carry immense kinetic energy. But a dense beam of positively charged protons would fly apart due to electrostatic repulsion, a phenomenon known as beam blooming. To remain collimated over hundreds of meters through the atmosphere, Godzilla would have to somehow co-project a stream of electrons to neutralize the beam's charge, creating a quasi-neutral beam, or employ an impossibly sophisticated magnetic focusing lens generated outside his own body. When this particle beam strikes the skyscraper, it's not just a physical impact, it is a subatomic sandblasting. The high-energy particles would cause nuclear spallation, literally chipping protons and neutrons off the nuclei of the iron, silicon, and carbon atoms in the building materials. This process releases vast amounts of secondary radiation gamma rays and a shower of neutrons, making the attack not just explosive, but profoundly radioactive on a fundamental level. In either the plasma or particle beam scenario, the physics is consistent. The energy required is that of a nuclear event, and the biology required to produce it is nothing short of miraculous. The annihilation of a skyscraper is merely the focal point of a far greater catastrophe. The implications of unleashing such energy extend well beyond the immediate target, rewriting the environmental, geological, and radiological map of Tokyo forever. The primary beam carves a path of vaporization, but the secondary effects are just as devastating. The interaction of a petajoule-scale energy beam with the atmosphere would create a column of superheated air, expanding outward at hypersonic speeds. This generates a cylindrical shockwave, a blast front of overpressurized air, qualitatively different from the spherical blast of a bomb. For those blocks adjacent to the beam's path, the result is the same. Buildings would not just be pushed over, they would be shredded by a hurricane of force, a wave of kinetic energy propagating from the central wound. Immediately following this pressure wave would be an even more lethal thermal pulse. The incandescent channel of air left in the beam's wake, heated to tens of thousands of degrees, would radiate a searing heat far more intense than any chemical fire. This radiation would ignite everything flammable within a radius of several kilometers. Wood, plastics, fuel, all would burst into flames simultaneously, birthing a firestorm. The immense heat would cause a massive updraft, drawing in air from the periphery at high speeds, creating terrifying fire whirls and feeding the conflagration until the entire district becomes a self-sustaining inferno, consuming its own oxygen and reaching temperatures capable of melting asphalt and glass. The sky would turn a permanent, hellish orange, choked with the carbonized remains of the city. The very ground upon which Tokyo is built would be irrevocably altered. The beam striking the earth would not create a simple crater. It would melt and vaporize tons of soil, asphalt, and bedrock, boring deep into the earth. The liquefied silica in the soil and rock would then cool rapidly, forming a massive glassy tube of rock known as a fulgurite. The epicenter of the blast zone would be transformed into a field of obsidian-like radioactive glass. More disturbingly, such a massive and instantaneous energy transfer into the Kanto Plain, a region of high seismic tension, could have unpredictable geological consequences. The vaporization of cubic kilometers of subsurface material could destabilize tectonic plates, potentially triggering sympathetic earthquakes or creating new volcanic fissures. The atomic breath is not just a weapon, it is an act of hostile terraforming. But perhaps the most insidious and lasting consequence is radiological. The term atomic breath is not a misnomer. If the beam is a stream of particles or fusion-derived plasma, it would be accompanied by a flood of high-energy neutrons. These neutrons would bombard the stable, non-radioactive elements in the environment, the iron and the steel skeletons of buildings, the sodium in the concrete, the cobalt in the alloys, and transform them into unstable radioactive isotopes through a process called neutron activation. The iron-56 becomes radioactive iron-57. The cobalt-59 becomes the dangerously potent gamma emitter cobalt-60. Every speck of dust, every twisted girder, every shard of glass in the ruins would become a source of lethal radiation. This is not like the fallout from a fission bomb, which decays over time. The half-life of cobalt-60 is over 5 years. The irradiated ruins of Tokyo would remain intensely radioactive for decades, creating an exclusion zone far more hostile and permanent than Chernobyl or Fukushima. The city wouldn't just be destroyed, it would be poisoned at an atomic level, rendered uninhabitable for centuries. The silent, vaporized skyscraper is only the first sentence in a story of lingering, invisible death. In analyzing Godzilla's atomic breath, we inevitably confront the biological paradox of the creature itself. The forces it wields should, by all accounts, annihilate it. Generating and expelling a multi-petajoule beam of energy from within a biological organism presents a thermal crisis of unimaginable proportions. Any system that is not 100% efficient produces waste heat. For a bionuclear reactor of this magnitude, even a 0.1% inefficiency would release enough waste heat to instantly boil the creature's own bodily fluids. Godzilla's survival necessitates a cooling system that defies known biology. His dorsal fins, previously identified as capacitors or heat sinks, must function with an efficiency that makes all other biological thermal regulation systems look primitive. Perhaps they operate as enormous radiators, not just for heat, but for exotic particles, flushing excess energy away from his vital organs. His relationship with water may be key. Submerging in the ocean might not just be for hiding, but an essential part of his thermodynamic cycle, using the vast Pacific as a coolant reservoir. The structural forces are equally daunting. The pressure generated to expel the beam would be immense, exerting a force on the creature's jaw, skull, and throat that would shatter any known skeletal material. His bones cannot simply be bone. They would have to be a biocomposite, perhaps an organically grown carbon nanotube lattice infused with metallic alloys, possessing a tensile strength and pressure resistance greater than any material we can engineer. His very tissues would need to be self-regenerating at a near-instantaneous rate to cope with the constant cellular damage from his own internal radiation. He is a walking, living exercise in material science, a being whose existence demands the invention of entire new fields of biology. Godzilla is not simply a large lizard. He is a masterpiece of evolutionary engineering, a response to a world of nuclear energy that has become part of his metabolism. His existence is the ultimate testament to life's theoretical adaptability, taken to a terrifying and sublime extreme. We analyze the physics of Godzilla's atomic breath in terms of weapons and disasters. We calculate its energy in megatons and compare its fallout to Chernobyl. We try to fit it into our human scale of destruction, but in doing so, we fundamentally miss the point. This act of city-wide vaporization isn't a strategy. It isn't an attack. It is an expression of a natural law made manifest in a single impossible organism. The atomic breath should not be compared to a bomb. It should be compared to a supernova. It is a biological entity wielding a stellar-level event. The true revelation is not in the joules or the radiation, but in the ontological shift it represents. Human civilization is built on the premise that we are the planet's dominant force. We build our cities of steel and concrete, confident in their permanence, believing we have mastered the physical world. The atomic breath is the universe's brutal rebuttal to that assumption. It does not just knock down our buildings, it unmakes them. It reaches into the heart of our proudest creations and reverses their existence, disassembling them atom by atom, returning them to the fundamental energy from which they were built. It is an act of geological and physical dominance so complete that it redefines the relationship between life and the environment. Godzilla is not a monster in a battle against humanity. He is a walking extinction event, a mobile, sentient geological process. His breath is not fire. It is the planet's own immune response, a localized eruption of the fundamental forces that forged the stars, deployed with biological precision. To witness it is to witness the illusion of our own mastery being vaporized along with our cities. The terror of Godzilla is not that he can destroy our world, but that he can effortlessly demonstrate that it was never truly ours to begin with. He is nature's power, given a form and a heartbeat, and his breath is the final incandescent proof that the laws of physics do not argue, and they cannot be defied.